guys, and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to show my 5 favorite techniques for using your alcohol ink on your gel press plate. We're going to start out with what is, I guess, considered the traditional method. So I've got an 8x10 gel press plate, and I'm just liberally sprinkling my alcohol inks all over it. I, of course, am using Ranger alcohol inks, so I will leave a link to those down below. They just happen to be the ones that I have. I know there's tons of other ones, so give them a try. So I have just sprinkled it all over, and I'm actually just going to take my brayer, and here's where it gets not tricky. You just need to do things specifically away. You don't want to just do full rolls because you're just going to overblend your alcohol ink. So we're doing what we call I call the dab and smoosh technique. So you're just lightly tapping and just moving that alcohol ink around your plate. And you can see it's given a great full coverage there. And then I'm going to be using silver to pull this print today. So this is the basic technique of how to use your alcohol ink, where you're just making a solid background. I love using silver and metallics because it's going to fill in any of those gaps in between our alcohol ink and just give a really cool finish to it. So I absolutely love using metallics for this particular technique. And you will notice that my plate is yellow, and that just happens over years of it being used. It just gets a little, depending on what you use, or using alcohol inks a lot, or even using like really heavy yellows and greens will tint it. It won't affect your prints. It's just an aesthetic thing. And you know, it just shows that my plate is well loved. So I've just applied some digital copy paper, which I'll leave a link to below. It's my favorite because it has a smooth texture but 28-pound weight. And you can see that metallic is great. It's bonded with that alcohol ink just to make a really beautiful background. Those colors have stayed vibrant against that silver. And so it is one of my favorite techniques to use to make really cool backgrounds. So let's move on to technique number 2. We're going to do the same basic thing, but this time we're going to go in and add some texture. So I'm going to use a different colors this time and just do the same thing. I'm going to just randomly apply them to my plate, and you can see on my plate that little funky thing at the top. I mistakenly left something leaning on it, didn't realize it, and so now I have a permanent indentation on my plate. So word of warning, don't do that. So I need to get a new one. So we're just gonna again do that dab and smoosh technique. And all the prints we're doing today are going to be at the end of the video. So if you don't get a good look at it while we're kind of going through this section, you can take a look at them down at the end. And so I'm going to go in actually with a caramel texture stamp. They have these beautiful, really intricate rubber texture plates. And what that's doing is every place that it touches, it's going to just lift that alcohol ink off of my gel press plate. And you can not really see it, but I tried. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create kind of that, I guess, alcohol ink sandwich, if you will. So we've got plate, and then we've got alcohol ink on top of it, and then we've got some silver paint. I think I'm using silver paint almost this entire video because it's just fun. That happens to be my other favorite. It's called iridescent green, I think is what it's called, or iridescent yellow green. These are Pebeo studio acrylics. They're some of my favorites to play with. And so now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing like we traditionally do. We're going to add our paper onto it, give it a nice little rub, and what that's going to do, like always, it's going to get that alcohol ink to want to stick to our paper with using that acrylic paint as opposed to sticking to our plate. And I love adding texture with alcohol ink because it gives you very crisp images, and you get just a lot of texture, and you don't have to have fancy, I don't remember what I'm talking about there, but apparently I was talking about something. But you just get really crisp texture using your prints or your plates on something like this. So you can see we've got really just tons of really great and very specific texture coming off of that texture plate from Caramel, and I'll leave that link below as well. All right, let's move to technique number 3. So this one, I don't know if this is the correct terminology, but we're calling it the blower method. So this is actually a tool that you can purchase from Ranger by Tim Holtz. And it's meant specifically for something like this, where you have alcohol ink on a non-porous surface, like your gel press plate or Yupo paper or glass. And it's meant to be able for you to manually manipulate where that ink is going. So opposed to doing the brayer technique, we're really just going to give it a nice little swoosh, swoosh, smoosh, smoosh, and you can see it's blowing that color around. So why use this versus the brayer? So this allows you to get a better and richer color from your alcohol ink because you're not losing any of it to your brayer or having a really thin layer. And it allows you to kind of more manually manipulate where you want color to be. The downfall to using this is it does require you to use more alcohol ink to pull a print and get something and get a print from it or get color from it to be able to move it around. And then you do run the risk of alcohol ink, if it gets built up too much, then it will get sticky and you could run into some problems there. So kind of play with it and see which techniques. They both are great, and in a minute I'll show you guys a side-by-side of the two so you can really see the difference in the saturation using the blower makes versus using the brayer. But with the brayer you get more coverage, so it really just kind of depends on what you're looking for. And so I'm going ahead and just adding my paper right there, giving it that nice little gel press rubby-dubby-dubby. I think sometimes I overdo it, but you know, it is what it is. So you can see with this one that I don't have as much coverage, but my color is more saturated, and I kind of have that ink blobby kind of thing. And on the right, you can see is where we use the brayer. Get more coverage, but your color is a little more toned down. So it really just depends on what you're going for. Both are fun. Both have their place in the creative world, but it's your choice. All right, technique number 4. Now this is one that I just started using and I have absolutely fallen in love with it. So we're actually going to take a stencil. This one is a really old one, and you can see stencils, because of the way gel press is made, kind of stick to the surface a little bit. And so you can kind of move it around and it gives a nice seal. And we're actually going to take our alcohol ink and actually sprinkle it over the stencil so that the color begins to kind of pool in those little pockets of our stencil. This is just a fun kind of circle, I guess. I don't remember the word for it. There's a word for like the remnants of sequins, and I can't remember what it's called. I want to say patchouli, but I know that's not right. That's a smell. And then we're just going to take our brayer, and we're actually going to add a little bit of pressure. And because of the squishability, the fancy word is durometer, of our plate, it's actually going to push up into it, and you can see that we get these really great crisp little circles. And what's great too is you almost can't overwork it because you've got those barriers of your stencil to kind of keep those colors separated. So we're just using it to kind of move the color around a little bit. And like every other one, we're going to add some paint. This is a white that I forgot I had because I couldn't find my traditional white. I think it's my white. I'm not sure. It looks white, but it kind of looks gloopy, so I'm not sure why. Always want to make sure that you have a thin layer of that acrylic paint. You almost want to be able to see your image through it. That's how you know you have enough paint but not too much paint, so that's a great little tip there as well. Give it just a nice little rub. What's great is you can use this technique with any kind of stencil. Really, if it has more open space, you're going to get a cooler image. I tried this with one that was kind of a lace pattern, and the openings were super small, and it just didn't come out as cool. But, you know, you live, you learn, you try. So look how great this is. So I've got this really funky watercolor, but then you've got those drastic edges, and I love the way the colors mix, and I think it is absolutely fantastic and super fun. And now I've got this that I can use to cut up to put in my Bible and my art journals, any of that kind of stuff. And of course you could do this directly in your art journal, directly in your Bible with your faith impressions, border kits. So all sorts of super fun things can be done. So now I'm going to put on some fun music, and I'm going to test out a few other stencils that I have in my collection just to kind of see what works best, what doesn't work at all. And let's go have just a little bit of playtime, and I'll be back with you in just a little bit. All right, and technique number 5. I call this one the Stencil Reactivation. Sounds super fancy, and you really kind of don't need a gel plate for this, but it is super handy to keep your surface clean. So these are the stencils I used earlier in the video, and what I realized I could do is I could take a spray bottle that has rubbing alcohol in it. I believe this one is a 75% solution, and spray it onto my stencil. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to reactivate that alcohol ink, and then I can actually pull the image of my stencil and not waste any of that alcohol ink, because now I've got another print that I can use. I started by testing it out on watercolor paper, and since this was the first time, I was like, I don't know how much to manhandle it, to rub it, but look how really cool that is. So I've now got the image of my stencil with all the leftover alcohol ink that was on it. So I think that's pretty cool. That's something I kind of just was playing with, and I was like, well, now I feel like I've wasted all this alcohol ink, and I was like, I wonder if I can reactivate it, and voila, I can. So I'm just taking a spray bottle, like I said, of alcohol ink and just reactivating the alcohol ink that's left on my stencils. I'm trying it again with the watercolor paper. So I tried it with watercolor paper and with my regular copy paper, and I really feel like I actually do like the regular copy paper better. There's something about the fibrousness of the watercolor paper that doesn't give you as crisp of an image. As you can kind of see, it's a little more, or maybe I added too much alcohol, I don't know, but it's really cool, extra print, and it pulled up the blue that was left over from the one I had done before. So again, that's a cool reason to do it on top of your gel press plate, because you're going to just build all of those colors and textures. So this is one that we used obviously earlier in the video as well, and I remember I used like browns and blacks. This one actually ended up being my favorite. So I'm showing I have 2 water bottles, and apparently I can't spell water because I added an L on the end, and I intentionally made them drastically different colors and labeled them so I would less likely to run the risk of mixing them up. So here we're trying it with just that regular 28-pound digital copy paper, and am I the only one who just loves the magic of like it starts to like peek through? I was like, makes me feel like Harry Potter or something, I don't know. And if you feel like you need a little bit more, you can just lift it up and add a little bit more if maybe you think you missed a spot. And so again, not knowing how well this technique would work, I'm probably giving it way more attention than it needs. But look how amazing that is. So I've got all these different colors. I've got that little bit of blue that was still on my gel plate from the previous images. I just think this is so fun, and it's a great way to just be responsible and use all of your stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and try all these techniques out, and let's look at those beautiful prints. Have a good day, guys.